Hello and welcome, my YouTube friends. It's so nice to have you. I'm so sorry for the technical difficulties. My camera isn't working right now, but I promise you it will be working for the next video. I wanted to record this video because I was trying to solve a problem for exchange rates in Power BI, and I found a very interesting solution using Yahoo Finance, and I want to share the solution with you. I'll share the code on M language here in the description of the video, so you can try it yourself. You can use this code and you can adjust it to your every need. But I wanted to explain the logic behind it. It's very important for you to understand how the M language works in Power Query, so you can make any fine adjustments you see fit for your needs. Again, this was a solution I was looking for a very specific project I was working on. So of course your needs will be slightly different or completely different. I don't know. So stay tuned with a video for today so you can understand the logic behind it. Okay. Don't forget to subscribe. Please leave your thumbs up if you like this video, and of course leave your comments below so we can interact. So let's go for it. I have here a blank instance from Power BI. And I don't have any connections whatsoever. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go straight into Power Query. So I'll click on Transform Data. It will open Power Query. And in order for you to get into the M language editor, and for those of you who don't know, M language is the language that Power Query uses. It's very similar to SQL in some cases. Of course, it comes from Excel, it comes from VBA. So it evolved into this one language called M language. But Power Query is very, very intuitive, so you don't have to worry too much about M language because you can create those steps for your queries yourself. But in the behind the scenes, what Power Query is doing is creating the language for you. It's creating the code for you, and that's what I'm going to show you. So you do that by going into the advanced editor. You can't, right? Because we don't have any live connections to this Power Query instance. So I'm going to go into new source and just create a blank query, right? And then the advanced editor will be available. If I click on it, we'll see that it just created a source blank, right? So I'm gonna just delete this thing and just paste the big code I've created. And I'm gonna go step by step on this with you, right? Again, it's in the description of the video, but I don't want you to just copy and paste without understanding the logic. So you can come here and make any necessary changes yourself. I'm gonna click on done. And we'll see that Power Query created this list of steps on the right sidebar here, right? And at the very end, the result of this long code is this list of dates, right? And the rate exchange for US dollars to Brazilian reais. So I had this project where I needed that quotation for every single day, and I wanted to make it dynamic. So every single day I went in, I refreshed the data, it would pull the rates up until the latest date, that is today. But it wasn't working somehow because with a previous solution I had, because Yahoo Finance, they changed some privacy settings, and it was hard for me to use the query path I was using because Power Query wasn't able to connect using the credentials I was providing, right? So there was this privacy barrier I was facing. So I had to use a different URL. I had to use a different path, and that's what I'm going to show you. So before I jump into the M language, I just want to close and apply and go back to Power BI just to show you the result of that query. Yeah, so it's basically like just a 2-column table. So if I add date and rate, and let's make this date. So yeah, it's basically the exchange rate from Brazilian reais to US dollars from December 1st, 2022 up until today, right? I'm recording this video on January 6th, so it updated until today. And that's what I'm gonna show you how it's done, right? So let's go back to Transform Data. And I wanna open the advanced editor so you can see the language. And let me just zoom this in. There we go. So I want to show you how this language works. Of course, I use ChatGPT to help me out with some of this code, but I had to go back and forth a couple of times and make some fine and manual adjustments because my need was very specific and ChatGPT just couldn't create the whole thing itself. But it's a great, great tool. We're going to record more videos about how to use ChatGPT to leverage that resource and save you some time, right? So the nice thing that I love about ChatGPT is that it comments every single thing. So it's very, very easy for you to come back and just simply understand what's going on. The first thing I need is a start date parameter, right? So for me, it was a fixed date. I wanted to be on December 1st, 2022. The second thing was to set the end date, and this one is dynamic. So it's pulling a function called Date.Time.LocalNow, right? So it's creating a date from that local now. It's like today in Excel, right? Where it pulls the date and timestamp of the time it refreshes. For me, today is January 6th, 2025. So that's the date I have here in this parameter for end date. The next thing is to convert these dates in a very specific format called unique state. So if you go into Finance, Yahoo Finance, and you look at the URLs, usually you'll see something like this: period 1 and period 2 equals a long number, right? And what is that number? That's a date in the uniques format. And what's a uniques format? It's the number of seconds for the selected date from January 1st, 1970, right? And please don't ask me why that is. Please ask ChatGPT. I don't know the logic behind. I don't know why that came to be, but that's just the logic behind it, right? It's just a number of seconds from January 1st, 1970. So it's converting the date, the start date and end date, into that one format, right? So it's using the number rundown, duration, total seconds from the start date to January 1st, 1970, right? I'm doing the same conversion for end date, and then we're gonna go into the URL to pull the data. The difference here from my previous attempt is that I'm not going into a specific URL where you can go into your browser and select stuff and see the data yourself, but it's a URL, a query URL from Yahoo Finance where it returns a JSON file, right? So if you don't know a JSON file, it's a structured database format, similar to CSV, but it's different, right? But just so you know, like it's somewhat similar. And that's what it does. So this link will return a JSON file that we can work on in Power Query. So we have here in the link some parameters, right? Some of them are fixed. For example, I'm looking specifically for this ticker, USD BRL, which is the US dollar to Brazilian reais. And the period 1 is the start date Unix, and the period 2 is the end date Unix, right? So I have the link here in the description again. You can check it out yourself. Then from that link, my M language will kind of download that JSON file, right? We'll get that JSON file, and then it will pull specific columns that I'm looking for. That JSON file contains multiple columns. I'm not only interested in a couple of them. For example, I'm looking for the closing price for that ticker. You can look at the open price or the daily average price, and you can adjust your code accordingly. These dates and timestamps, they are in a Unix format again. So we had to convert our date to Unix format, and now we need to convert them back to a date format we humans can read. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm converting that into something I can read back to a date format. And then it creates a table, right? It simply creates a table with the 2 columns with the date and a closing price. And it just does some column formatting, right? Changing the type and renaming columns and whatnot. So let me just show you in Power BI, in Power Query, excuse me, what does that look like up to that step? So there we go. Yeah. So all those steps we saw, so start date, end date, blah, 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 and we get to this final table step, right? So all that list of coding was actually creating the steps we see on the right, and this is the final product up to that point. So we can see that we have dates from December 1st, 2022, the exchange rate, right? I actually forgot a few steps because I did some date formatting, right? We changed the column to a date format, and the rate I wanted to use instead of the currency format, I wanted to have a float number. And for me specifically, there was still a problem. I stopped here, but then I realized something. You can see that there are some missing dates in this column. So we have January 1st, January 2nd, and then we have December 1st, December 2nd, and then you have December 5th. So it's basically skipping weekends, because on the weekends, there's no, the stock market doesn't open, so there's no closing price for Saturday or Sunday. Thus, my table's missing a few dates, and that was a problem for me because in this project, I need to convert specific transactions that happen every single day, even on Saturdays and Sundays. and I wanted to convert that from BRL to USD and vice versa. So how do I fix for that? I needed to create, to add additional rows to this table to account for the missing days or the weekends. And what I decided to do was to use the closing price of the Friday as the price for Saturday and Sunday as well, right? It was the best approach for me, for my project specifically. You might want to change that, right? So the next step here, and I'm going to do this here in Power Query now, not in the M language editor. I created a list of all the dates from start date to end date. So I'm not disregarding weekends. So I have December 3rd, December 4th, every single day, right? So I converted that into a table with a column called all dates. I changed that to a date format, and then I pulled the exchange rate. And then I had to rename the exchange rate table's date to rate date, just so when I merge those two, or when I join those two, I don't have a conflict with columns with the same name. So then if you're familiar with SQL or SQL, you're familiar with the join clause, right? So that's what I did here. And we can see it's calling a function called table join, right? So I'm joining the first table I had, the rate date as I'm calling. So we can see that there are a couple of null values in here, right? These are the weekends where I don't have a date, or actually I don't have a rate. Thus, I don't have a date in my original table. But the brand new column I just created called all dates, I have every single day, including the weekends, right? So I created that join. I renamed that column. I sorted the table because in an ascending order, because now I have first, the second, the third, fourth, and so on. And then I used a function in Power Query called fill down, right? If you're familiar with Excel, remember that click and drag down. When you have a formula you want to drag down through multiple cells. It's a very similar, because in this case, because it's sorted, this day here, December 2nd, it's a Friday, right? It's preceding a null value and a null value. That's a Saturday and a Sunday. So basically what I'm doing, I'm filling down this 5.1836 down to Saturday and Sunday. So that's what my formula is doing, right? So when I call this function fill down the rate table, it will fill down for all the blank values in that column. And finally, I'll just remove that one column, right? The rate date, I don't need that anymore. And now I end up with a list of all dates from December 1st, 2022 up until today, with all the exchange rates, including weekends, right? And I use the Friday's rate for Saturday and Sunday. And you might want to change that if that's your case, but I just wanted to explain the logic so you understand why I did that and why the code works that way. So going back to the advanced editor, just zoom in, just so we can take a look at what the code looks like, right? So I created here a list of all the dates, a table with all the dates, right? Had to do some renaming, so we don't have columns with the same name when I work on the merging those two tables, right? That's what I did here. I had to rename it. And then these are the last steps, right? I sort in ascending order. So I have the dates in the right order. Then I can use the fill down function for rate, and it's pulling down for Saturday and Sunday. And finally, just remove that one column, and that's the final result. So pretty cool. It's working for now. I hope Yahoo Finance doesn't change anything that will block me from accessing it in the future. But that's just one caveat of using these free services like Yahoo Finance. It's a great service, but whenever they change something, they change the URL, then you need to come back and maybe do some tweaks in the code in order to go back and work. This was a problem I was working on for a couple of weeks, and I'm glad I found the solution. I was super excited. That's why I wanted to record this video. I hope it helped you somehow. Please leave your comments below if you feel like, or if you see something that you don't quite understand, or if you're looking for some specific changes to this code to your needs, that I might be able to comment back and help you out, right? So going back to Power BI, oops, that's the final solution, right? So if I go back here tomorrow and I refresh the data, then I'll get the same chart, the same data, plus January 7 and so forth. So that's the magic of Power Query. That's the magic of Power BI, and I love it. So please leave your thumbs up if you like this video, if you enjoyed it. Leave your comments below again to let us know what you think of this content, and I'll see you in the next one.